Jessica Gillingham, and I'm the CEO and founder of Abode Worldwide. And I have my co-host here today, Astrid. Would you like to introduce yourself, Astrid?
Yeah, I'm Astrid, Senior Account Manager here at Abode, and yeah, excited to be here with everyone.
Great. So let's start this webinar. But before we go into the bones of it, I'll just give a little bit of introduction on Abode and why we are doing this. Now, this is our first webinar, and we thought that this topic is so important that we wanted to make sure that we were educating you all on how search is changing. And just to give you a bit of background on Abode, we are a very specialist public relations consultancy and agency, and we work with hospitality technology and property technology companies that operate within the lodging sectors. So that's hotels, short-term rentals, the living sectors, multifamily and build to rent. And so we've been around since 2017, and we've seen how things are changing for the tech companies that we work with, and the whole kind of world of PR, if you like. And what we're excited to talk about today is that there's something that's reshaping brand discovery as we know it, and that is the rise of AI-driven search. And what I just want to give you is, for those of you that may not always be necessarily aware of what strategic PR does, firstly, just like in normal PR, and we're going to talk about the LLM sort of side of things, but PR sits around the whole sales funnel. So PR provides that halo of trust and credibility right from awareness. So when prospects or strategic partners are looking to find out about you, you come up because of PR. That awareness and visibility piece is there. Then PR helps in that consideration phase when buyers are looking to choose a new solution to a problem they might have, or they're looking to re-look at their tech stack or whatever it is. And as we all know, only about 5% of B2B buyers are actually in the market to buy something at the time we want them to be ready. So it's really important to be really out there and visible when they're considering their options. So the time that they come to make that decision, you're there. And what traditional PR does is it really helps with that decision making. You know, they start to prospects know and understand what solution might be right for them. So if we look at this from the LLM and the AI kind of perspective or prism, if you like, the awareness piece is changing. You know, it does all still start with visibility, but the way people are searching is changing, and we'll go into that a little bit further into the webinar. But when someone asks a question, in whether it is in ChatGPT, whether it's in Gemini, Perplexity, or even in Google for the Google overviews, the AI pulls from its sources. It pulls from sources that it trusts to build its first answers. And if your brand has got those strong media mentions and credible reviews, you've got a much higher chance of appearing in AI summaries. So in the AI world, when it comes to awareness and visibility, it's not just about being on page 1 of Google. It's actually about being inside the answer. So the next phase that PR traditionally kind of places a halo over is that consideration. You know, when buyers are starting to think about the brands that might be right for the solution for the problem that they have, so the solution that they might be looking for. So once a prospect knows your name, the awareness piece has already been there, they're evaluating all the different options that they have. And in the world of AI and LLM-driven sales funnel, the AI doesn't just surface a website. It pulls insight from articles, thought leadership pieces, product comparisons, and then also discussions across the web. So if your brand has been cited in respected outlets or positioned as a category expert, the AI will highlight you and your brand more favorably. So put simply, the more credible your brand appears across multiple sources, the stronger your presence is at that consideration stage. And then the final stage is the decision. When AI recommends brands, whether it's in best of lists or product comparisons or through direct advice, they are heavily influenced by accumulated trust signals. So if you've invested in building strong backlinks, having earned media coverage, positive reviews, a sort of a strong opinion about things as well, the LLMs are far more likely to recommend your brand as a best fit solution. So really your brand becomes the AI's shortcut to a decision, you're not just one of many options. So strategic PR today is about building your brand awareness. Like it's always been about building your brand awareness, but in the age of LLMs, it's even more important because it's shaping how AI perceives your authority, your credibility, and your fitness to recommend. Now, Astrid's going to talk a little bit more about search and the next stage to think about.
Right. So, as Jessica was saying, traditional search is no longer the gateway to information. So people used to go on search engines like Google, they would type in a few keywords and they'll find links. But now people are using large language models like ChatGPT to get answers. And in fact, research firm Gartner predicts half of all search traffic will be gone in 3 years' time. So what we're seeing now is that large language models like ChatGPT, Google's AI Overview, Claude, Perplexity, they're essentially disrupting SEO-based traditional discovery. And the way people search for information is also changing. They don't just put in keywords anymore. It's become a lot more conversational, a lot more complex. And the average query on ChatGPT is actually 23 words. So that's much longer than 2 to 4 on a typical Google search. And it's not just long tail queries. People also tend to have a back and forth with the chatbot. So essentially, what we're seeing is that we're moving from find and choose information to ask and receive recommendations. And this shift has a major implication for how your brand shows up. So in Google, you might get ranked lower or bumped to the second page, but on ChatGPT, you might not even appear. So yeah, that's a huge difference between Google's and LLMs. But I think Jessica, you're going to go into that a bit more next.
I am, Astrid. Thank you. Because the main thing is that the LLMs don't just show, they recommend. And I'm just going to give, in case you're not aware, just a couple of things about traditional search on Google and then LLMs. Now, Google is a deterministic database that searches for answers, and then it's you that chooses the answer that's right for you. We all know what it's like to search on Google. Google curates links, ranks results, it displays snippets and summaries, but ultimately it's up to you to decide whether the information is the right information for you. Now, the LLMs are different. They're non-deterministic pattern matchers that guess the answer. Now, as we all know, they're not always correct. They'll give a good answer, but not necessarily the right answer. And how do they do this? They curate the answers, and they may include brands or they may not include brands. They synthesize and interpret information that they find, and they recommend best fit responses. And if we can go into the next slide. So what is it that shapes the LLMs? Now, they prioritize authoritative, high quality sources, whether that's news media or trusted sites. They also don't analyze links like Google does. Instead, they consume mentions in context. So what the AI is doing is choosing for users. So how do you make sure that your brand is one of those that is chosen? Because importantly, they don't just fetch information and rank websites. They really prioritize trusted sources like media mentions, product reviews, and expert commentary. So in fact, sources cited in AI overviews typically rank in the top 10 of Google search results. So it's not that we don't want SEO. SEO is still foundational, but this earned media and being on credible other sources is so important. And Astrid, I know that you're going to go a little bit further into that about why PR isn't just nice to have, it's really a growth lever.
Yeah, absolutely. With AI search, PR is kind of your secret weapon. And here's why. PR helps associate your brand with the right topics. And as we discussed before, large language models, they don't just match keywords like search engines do. They look at how closely different words are related. So they evaluate semantic proximity. So if the word's easy to use and your brand name keeps showing up together and in places where ChatGPT views as authoritative, it will start linking the two and recommending your brand to users when they want a product that's easy to use. So let's look at the diagram on the right to understand how LLMs work. So models like ChatGPT, they're neural-based network model trained on hundreds of billions of data. They're trained to understand statistical patterns and relationships between words. Now, when answering questions, the model uses this knowledge to predict subsequent words, one word at a time. So the diagram can show what or how an LLM might internally organize information based on their connections. So each circle is a word or idea, and each line shows how strongly they're linked. Now, if you look at the word cat, it's closely tied to kittens, and the word dog is closely related to puppies. Cats and dogs are also closely linked, because they're common pets. There's lots of articles contrasting the two. There's a lot of data the model can draw from. If you look at the words dog and skateboard, they are connected, but the link is weaker. Now, when you ask ChatGPT a question, a map like this lights up, and the model would follow the strongest connections to find the most relevant and likely words, ideas, or concepts to answer questions. And what's really important is that LLMs don't just store facts, they learn patterns from across billions of examples. Right. So, what does this all mean for your brand? It means that you need to consistently shape how AI models see your brand. You need to create content, information that essentially teach the model how to see you. And I think, yeah, let's go to a few more slides and see how you can do that. Right. So, as we said, it's useful to think about how your brand sounds to an AI. Does it carry a positive sentiment? Is it credible? Do customers like it? Now, AI models fetch information about your brand from sources they trust most, and they look for authority signals to decide what to eventually recommend to users. And here's where they get their signals from. First, we've got review platforms and product directories. So that's a good signal for a kind of overall sentiment about your product. And then we have news articles, thought leadership, and third party content. These are great signals and sources of information for things like product updates or new developments, business milestones. And then we have corporate blogs, your official brand channels. They also carry a lot of weight because AI likes primary sources of information. And then we've got academic papers, community sites, and Wikipedia, and they're great for giving LLMs these kind of long form information that's really rich in context. Right. So with all of this, we know that brands that focus on PR across all of those channels see higher visibility in AI searches. And this is one of the case studies that we'll look at now. This one is about brand associations in ChatGPT, right? So here we ask ChatGPT, what is the best property management system in hospitality? Short, simple query. I didn't include any details, segment, location, specific needs. And ChatGPT broke it down to common decision criteria. So ease of integration, guest experience, ease of use, automation, training, and support. And then it listed some top rated brands. Now the question is why these companies? So it's likely because they have strong reviews on trusted platforms, but it's also because their brand attributes, like the words easy to use or helpful support team, they're closely linked to the idea of best property management system in the AI's training data. And this is where PR can really help you because over time you can build and strengthen the associations between those key topics and your brand. But again, this only works if your content lives in sources that LLMs see as authoritative. So let's look at another case study where that's the case. All right, this one is about earned media in ChatGPT. We asked ChatGPT what are the best examples of property management companies using AI agents. Now, for this example, we turned on the search feature. So the model pulled from current web results and it returned 5 recommendations, mostly sourced from top tier outlets like Hotel Management Network. There's Focuswire there, Hotel Technology News. It also surfaced results from Wikipedia, and there is a report from a consulting firm. Now, what's interesting here is that press mention can even outrank your own website, and branded mentions inside context-rich articles carry a lot of weight with AI. Now, again, this is where PR really comes in, because if you earn consistent positive coverage in these types of sources, over time, your brand will surface up in the searches because it is signaling that you're a trusted and a credible result to surface to users. Right. So now, next, Jessica will share a few checklists on where to focus your PR and communication efforts to get mentioned.
Brilliant. Thank you, Astrid. And here's a bit of an LLM visibility checklist to make sure that you're appearing in all these different places. And the first is, as we've said, it's those earned media mentions, those high authority publications. And if you're a specialist tech doing B2B, then there are obviously, really specialist publications that have high ranking authority. So whether if you're hospitality tech, it might be Skift or Focuswire, or if it's hotel tech, something like Hotel Investor, and then prop tech, it might be Property Week. There are, of course, others. So it's just making sure that you are there, because that is where the LLMs are scraping their information to find out what's credible sources for the search terms that are being asked of it. Then, of course, there's the review platforms and product directories. So that might be Capterra, G2, Hotel Tech Report, Trustpilot, all those places. It's really important to be making sure that you are seen and visible in those places. Then it's educational content. So it is the big reports that you might be doing. It might be the white papers, the FAQs, product pages, all of the things that you would have been doing in a really good content marketing and SEO strategy. Like, it's still really important to be investing and doing those, because it's easy to pattern match answers for that. And then it's discussion forums. So it might be Reddit or Quora or LinkedIn. And I just want to tell you something that happened to me earlier in the week on LinkedIn. So I had a message from someone that I didn't know. We weren't connected in any way on LinkedIn. And he sent me his ChatGPT results. He had been looking for experts or thought leaders in the topic of hotelization of real estate. And I was one of those ones that came up, and it had what I had written, and it was because of what I was posting on LinkedIn. Now, from that connection, we now have, he's a sales prospect for us, and we've built a relationship, and his client is now coming on our Pillow Talk podcast. So everything from him looking for, who are the thought leaders in hotelization and real estate? It's a topic that I talk about and write about. But the point is that the LLM took the information from LinkedIn. So that's something to think about. Then, of course, it's Wikipedia, comparison sites and comparison lists, and then thought leadership. Now, on the next slide, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on thought leadership. So sometimes it gets confused about what thought leadership is. And basically, thought leadership is about raising your brand and or the leadership of your brand as category experts by providing really insightful opinion and commentary about topics within the industry that matter to the industry and the customers that you're operating in. So why thought leadership is so important is that it tends to be content that really drives brand mentions. And that could be, and thought leadership covers all sorts of things. It's about building leaders, basically. And it might be interviews or expert comments, guest articles. It might be webinars like this or podcasts. It's also those data-driven reports and case studies that you might be doing, producing yourself. So the LLMs really value that authentic expertise and contextual authority that thought leadership is so good at. But one of the things is that consistency really is key. So being the voice of your sector, and it might be owning topics like ESG, automation, AI agents, guest experience, whatever it might be that really makes sense for you to own as a topic in the industry. And what it is LLMs just really love clear, opinionated positioning, as do, of course, traditional media as well, as do the markets that you play in. So that's just a little bit about, thought leadership and really looking at it as LLM fuel. Now, on the next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit more about SEO, because SEO and PR, can often be a sort of slightly conflictual relationship, but also a very good relationship as well. And what is changing? SEO is still really important, but it's changing. So instead of optimizing for queries, we're optimizing for questions now, and we're building FAQ style content and prioritizing, positive ratings and top review sites. But what's really important to remember, that PR and earned media and thought leadership is this signal. It signals topical relevance and authority, and AI models love signals to third-party mentions, reviews, and discussions. It's really the more positive context, the higher authority signal that you have. So think of it this way: the more high quality places that your brand appears, the stronger your trust signal is to the AI models. So there are also some pitfalls to avoid when you're thinking about your strategy going forwards. And Astrid, I think you're going to go through some of these pitfalls, please.
Right. So yeah, let's look at the things you want to avoid. It's useful to know what doesn't work anymore in AI searches. So first is only relying on your own website and channels. As Jessica mentioned, LLMs need multiple authoritative signals to confidently recommend your brand. That means showing up in trusted publications, sharing expert insights, and publishing data-driven content. Second, focusing only on SEO tactics without a real brand narrative. LLMs learn through patterns and context, not just keywords. So you need to build stories and just content that help AI understand what your brand stands for. Third is just chasing backlinks. So remember, we talked about how traditional search traffic is dropping. So you can't win only with just clicks. Now you win on trust. And that means earning credibility on sites LLMs view as authoritative. And the last two items here is treating PR as a one-off effort. And I've seen this done many times. To stay visible in AI, you need to be consistent. So your communications must be ongoing. You can't just be reactive or disappear after one or two campaigns. And again, we always tell our clients that PR is a long game. And brands who strategically play for the long run are the ones AI rewards over time. Right. I think it's a time to put some things to action. So Jessica, maybe you can share some actionable steps next.
I will, Astrid. It's all about action. So what can you do to make sure that you're LLM ready? So firstly, do an audit. You can do a manual audit of the various LLMs, go into Claude, Perplexity, Chat, and ask questions about your brand and about your competitors and see what's coming up. It's really important to just get a real good idea, if you haven't already done that, of what your brand search has come up with, as well as your competitors. And then it's build and create a media-ready brand story. And with that, you can then amplify it by launching a thought leadership campaign and a press campaign, and doing that regularly. And then it's monitoring. Make sure you track share of voice, your topic relevance, and brand mentions, just to make sure you're ahead. And I know that Astrid's going to move a little bit more into metrics now.
Yeah. Yes. So let's look at these metrics, and Jessica alluded to this earlier. First one you want to measure is share of voice, but it's not just any share of voice compared to competitor. It is share of voice in a particular set of topics you want to own. That way you're focused on building consistent messaging that AI will pick up over time. In fact, you can go on your ChatGPT and just experiment now. You can put in kind of questions related to your focus topics and see if your brand comes up. And you can make note of any other brand mentions and analyze their web mentions to spot gaps, and then you can benchmark against their visibility. You just kind of experiment just to see, how your brand performs. Next metric is brand search mentions and earned media value. So this is kind of hygiene metrics in PR. You still want to measure that total volume of coverage, but in top tier sources and credible sources and places like LinkedIn, for example. The other metric here is executive visibility. So this measures how many times your spokespeople and leaders are featured across different channels. And the more they appear in top tier sites, the more credible they become in front of AI. And lastly, it's really interesting, it's inclusion in LLM responses. So there's a new measurement technique being developed by providers like HubSpot and Ahrefs. It measures how many times your brand pops up in AI searches. And if you look at the picture on the right, this is Ahrefs' new tool called Brand Radar. And we put in two different brands to measure. The blue line is a client who's been with Abode for multiple years, and they've heavily invested in PR on top of a solid SEO and content strategy. And the orange line is a relatively new client who's just started their PR efforts. And you can see our older client has much higher visibility on LLM compared to the new one. It's the result of their kind of ongoing efforts. So yeah, you can see this is how PR can really impact where you show up and how you show up in where people want to find you, which is the LLMs. Right, so I think we're nearing the end, Jessica. I know you've got some final words before we go to the Q&A. So over to you.
Thank you, Astrid. And absolutely, I just want to say a few sort of final words, and then I know that we do have some questions that have come through. And I think the thing is, the landscape is changing fast. You kind of don't need me to say it. We all know it. We all feel it. It's challenging. It's changing. So in an AI curator, and I guess the number one thing to understand is in the new AI curated world, brands aren't just found, they're chosen. And they're chosen by machines that pattern match authority. So it's really important that you're one of those brands that become chosen by investing in that strategy to make sure that you're visible. So you really want to make sure that you're not left behind.